What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Plague Scythe Studios once again with our annual shitting on NAMM stream, not live thing with my lovely friend Leon Todd. Thank you so very much for joining me early in the morning once again.
Thank you for having me. I'm caffeinated and ready to roll through some questionable and awesome gear selections.
I am the opposite. I'm dragging ass, but I'm hoping our intense discussion will fuel us both here. It's anti-NAMM, quarantine season, so I think it's worth pointing out that maybe this year might be a little underwhelming compared to previous years in terms of release and news and that sort of thing. So keep that in mind. But I think there's still a couple really cool items to go over. So the first thing I wanted to touch on, I guess, is a bit of a well done award. We kind of started off on maybe a bit of a bullying rant on the last edition of this, but Zoom, I think, have really outdone themselves with the G6. I'll post the meme here real quick to remind you guys of what they came out with last year, and it's basically the polar opposite. I was really impressed with the not only the audio demos I've heard of this new unit. It does have IR loading, unlike the last one. It looks like a cohesive product. It honestly looks like what the last Zoom G11 should have been. Have you heard audio of this yet?
Yeah, I was pretty impressed. Very, very impressed. And I'm more impressed by the way it looks. It's almost, I can't imagine they sold any of the G11. Like, did the G11 even come out? But that was just, spec-wise, it was kind of cool. It was missing a few things, but it just looked like a dog's breakfast, whereas this looks like like a post Helix modeler kind of should look, I guess.
Right. I guess that if I had to say anything that were questionable about this, they claim to have discovered new distortion and modulation modes that I'd like to dive into to see if they're full of crap or not. I don't get me wrong, there's some fold back stuff that you can do that, most analog gear does not do, but I'd really like to put that claim to the test. But I think I'm more impressed with the price point than anything. Pod Go coming in at 450 US, this comes at 442 euros, which, convert that up, it's a little bit more expensive, but this looks more, this is something I would expect out of a $1,000 model, or more like a Boss GT 1000 tier. Obviously you don't have quite as many foot switches, but personally, I think what they're shooting for, at least the concept they were shooting for last time, where like every foot switch does a thing, or in this instance, 2 or 3 to 4 things that you can see. I think that approach works for people that maybe aren't as familiar with the whole modeling and MIDI controllable thing. So I'm looking forward to seeing this scaled down as much as I am about this product.
Yeah, it looks, when Boss come out with something, you expect a certain thing, and it's like, okay, cool, they've done the Boss thing at the Boss price point. You know what you're going to expect. This, to me, is more like Zoom are kind of like that, where, they give you a lot of bang for your buck. They give you, traditionally, things which are excessively priced that are normally sort of overspec'd for the price point, and this feels a lot more like that.
Right. The I/O is one thing that it's a little questionable to me. Output is labeled right, left, mono. I'm assuming these are balanced capable, because the left jack is also the headphone. So I don't know exactly how, if you have a high impedance headphone set, is that going to be compatible? Again, it's just something else you'd have to test. But
hey, classic Zoom.
Yeah, I think it was my whatever thing that I demoed on my channel at one point or another. The G2, I think, not the .1, but the 2.0. They did the same thing. It's like combine all the jacks into one, which I'm a fan of in terms of ergonomics and cost savings. But just don't expect to go into this thing with some sprawling MIDI capable pedal board. This isn't really meant for that.
Yeah, precisely. But yeah, it looks. I'm impressed that they turn it around so quickly.
Yeah, this is definitely a success story of, I think, hearing loudmouths like ourselves complain about the last one. On the opposite end of the spectrum, both in cost and capability, we have the Fender headphone Mustang, not Dave Mustaine, Micro. This is a product that, and I think this is something else we should probably mention when we talk about best and worst of NAMM. Just because we call something worse doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad product objectively. It means one or two things, at least to me. One, it's mismarketed or overpriced, or two, it's just really, really boring. And I think this falls into the latter category. As Leon and I were talking before this video, I think there is maybe a market for this kind of thing. Perhaps you could share about that.
Yeah, so this to me just looks like, Nuex make the Mighty plug, which I really like. I've got one and I just keep it in my guitar bag because sometimes you want to warm up before a gig and or even you just want to, you're at a gig and there's people around you and you need an excuse to not talk to them. So you can put your plugs in and you can sit there and it sounds pretty good. The thing for me that was interesting about that was I showed it to my dad, who's a guitar player, and he flipped out about it because it was perfect. He doesn't want to have to connect a phone or an iPad or a computer. Like, he does not own or use any of those things. So the idea to him that he's got a thing with a big button on it that you can press and you have a decent enough clean sound, crunch sound, and lead sound you can listen to on headphones makes sense. So from that perspective, I can see how that would make sense. But at the same time, it's just really, I don't know, it just screams of like, we're this giant corporation. We saw that it's like an Amazon style thing, right? You know how Amazon,
yes,
their business practice is basically, let's see what sells really well. People are buying cushions with photos of dogs on them for $30. Let's mass produce cushions with photos of dogs on them for $19 and totally undercut this person's business idea. Not that that's exactly the same, but it ties into a few other things as well with certain, I guess, bigger companies just going like, oh yeah, now we're going to do that.
Exactly. There's like, probably due to the technology surrounding it and it being so prolific on 80s records, but like the original Rockman that you've demoed, that's a sick ass piece of gear. There's something, and of course, I'm not an analog versus digital snob, but there is something that is just sanitized about this class of product to me, where it's like, and I get the age differential here, but if I'm going to have something like this, why not just use my phone? There's like this, I can't even remember what it's called. It's like Tone Hub. I don't remember, some freeware app that I decided to screw around with one day. And it does basically what you describe. It's not great. You're not going to get an album ready tone out of it for noodling or warming up. It's good enough. And, you buy a cable, especially with USB-C phones that, break out to a 1/4 inch and what are you like $15-20 in on a device you're already carrying. So to me, this is just redundant. And as you said, it just screams of, we got to get into this sector of lifestyle and put our brand on it kind of thing, because let's be real, those 12 amp models aren't going to magically sound exactly like a Bassman or a Reverb or a Champ cranked or anything like that. But for, what it is, fine. But I would honestly just rather buy a Rockman Ace and just throw it in my guitar bag. That's just me.
Yeah, exactly.
Something else that screams of nostalgia, but I'm actually pretty excited for. The SansAmp Classic is back, and I think they read my mind because for the past 2 or 3 months, I've been keeping that on my Reverb watch list. I've got too much gear to look at anyway, but there is something about the new SansAmps that I've tried in person and listening to side-by-side shootouts. They just don't do the same thing. It's not amp modeling in the modern sense, but they did some pretty incredible stuff with some dip switches and analog circuitry to get some really cool album tones. And looking for either a vintage model or the original re-release of the Classic is getting pretty hard, and they're going for $250 to $300. So I'm glad they're being re-released to let people of our generation, our kind of players, to re-experience that kind of stuff and hopefully drive some used prices down, is my hope.
Yeah, it's a good, I think it's just kind of testament to good design where, yeah, it's not using tubes and it's not using DSP-based modeling. But I know with the rack mount unit I've got, they just basically have pre-EQ and post-EQ that's really powerful and a decent enough distortion circuit. And from that, you can make it work, which is kind of cool. So yeah, that was interesting. And they also, this seems like the year everybody has finally gone, let's just stop bothering with these analog speaker simulations and put an IR loading and stuff.
Thank God.
Yeah, it's like everybody, you know, we have crossed that point of criticality where people just go, speaker sim, IR loader, boom, boom.
Yeah, it's I mean, I get why they used to do the analog speaker sim. If you're blasting through PA speakers and, you know, everything else is getting muddied up in the mix anyway, a couple simple high pass and low pass filters will definitely tame an amplifier or a dry, you know, overdriven sound. But compared to what you can do with, you know, $100 pedals that include this kind of stuff out of the box, it's just inexcusable. Now, again, like something like this or the aforementioned Rockman, or hell, you know, some even older digital modeling gear, there is something to that where the speaker sim does kind of suck. There's something, I don't know, there's something I like in that you just can't reproduce elsewhere. So I like when we do preserve sounds like this. You know, I mean, early Rammstein albums, I think Kurt Cobain even used a few of these. But yeah, like you said, when it comes to actually creating something that you might confuse for a real tube amplifier sound, it's amazing what you can do with some pre-EQ, some post-EQ, and a good IR, and you can just transform even, you know, a basic distortion pedal into something that sounds pretty damn awesome.
Yeah, big time. So that's like the modeling stuff. We should talk about some guitars, because you had some interesting guitars on the list for best and for worst.
I'm totally down for that. Let's go back to worst for a moment. This one might come as a surprise to some of you, considering one of my most popular videos on this channel, but one of my picks for worst is the Dean ML Select 8-string multiscale with Kahler electric guitar satin natural black burst. Whew, could you add a few more words onto this? This thing is an abomination. Oh my God. Now I own several 8-strings and one of them has a Kahler. I'm a big advocate for multiscale on especially extended range guitars, but on really guitars in general. I think that's something that is just going to be a staple going forward with contemporary guitar design. But there are certain shapes that it just don't work for. You know, Super Strats looks pretty cool. The Ergo shapes can work really well. I don't think you can pull off multiscale on stuff like a Les Paul, for instance. This one's is certainly one of those shapes that I'm not a fan of. Plus, it's bolt on and it kind of looks cheap from the back. But you know, details. You know, if I think of an ML, there's only a couple players besides Dimebag that I think could pull off playing an ML style guitar and not look like a douchebag anyway. And then you throw the canted pickups and this really strange looking tremolo system, which, you know, people detract from the Kahler anyway. I don't use mine as a tremolo. It's fine as a fixed bridge. But I wouldn't tour with the thing, and I certainly wouldn't dive bomb on an 8-string with this. So, I mean, it sounded fine in the demo, but good Lord, this thing has to just be a behemoth to play at the very least.
Yeah, I don't know, because it's one of those things where on paper, it should appeal to like everyone who likes metal, right? Because everyone loves Dimebag. It's a cool metal guitar shape. It's an 8-string. It's fan fret. You've got the flexibility of the Kahler. But yeah, I don't know. Without like actually playing one, it just kind of doesn't look right. I almost feel like there's something with, just from a design standpoint, with the angles. It's almost like because they've just slapped it on. If you went back and you like looking at the angle that the lower horn is on, but then the frets, and they're not the same, and it's inconsistent. And I think there's something in that where just the lines clash.
Yes, I 100% agree. I think there's that where you might have been able to stretch out this body in a couple weird ways and maybe offset the horns and make it work like you're talking about. I also think it's not like a lot of contemporary fan frets where it's fanned at both ends. It's only fanned at the bridge, and the headstock
I think
is
that's
still
what's
straight.
doing it for me.
Yeah, doesn't that? It just looks like you're looking at the guitar from a side, like from the bottom looking up until you look at the body, and I don't know. It just looks like you've warped it in Photoshop or something. Not only because of that, not only is it strange looking, but the fan fret profile isn't actually that extreme. So we're only, normally with an angle like that at the bridge, you're looking at 2.5 inch differential, but with this, you're only going to 25.5 inch to 27, which, Fender scale to baritone is not bad, but personally, I think, 27 inch 7 strings are a pretty good compromise. I really want 28 to 29 inch on an 8 string, but again, this thing is such a monster already. I don't know that would have flown. So yeah, kind of a mismatch of ideas. Like you said, it should be the ultimate metal machine, right? But yeah, not for me.
Almost, it's an almost guitar. I think you could fix it. If you actually designed it from the bottom up rather than like slapping 8-string fan fret. If it did the fan both ways, and then if you tweaked at least the main cutaway so that it is at least like parallel to one of the frets that it meets or something, it might kind of tidy it up a little bit. So maybe there's an idea out there for, some original guitar designer, take the ML, tweak it enough where it's not infringing intellectual property, and you might have a cool thing. Yeah, it's an again, as you said, it's not like objectively bad, but it just feels like a miss.
For sure. Yeah, I would much like the Zoom situation. I would love for them to fix this, because I've been complaining for the past going on 3.5, 4 years now that especially the extended range guitar market is just, there's not enough shapes. Every especially these metal brands are sitting on these iconic shapes that they don't do a whole lot with their 7 and 8 string or 9 string guitars. And, this is exhibit A of, I guess, why they don't a lot of the times, because they just don't work, but is what it is, swing and a miss. I'm happy that they tried, but let's see what they can do next year.
Yeah.
On the best of, though, I am really, really impressed with these Ibanez EHB basses. At first glance, they're kind of like, okay, you're going for the Steinberg thing, but not really at the same time. The multi-scale model especially, this is one of those instances where like the body shape is so screwed up that it kind of works with the fan fret look. And normally, for one of these guitars, I'm not a big fan of it. It kind of reminds me of Kiesel in this way, where you got this like roasted maple look on a candy solid body finish. But again, it kind of works with this, and I like the electronic configurations, kind of your bread and butter, but there's something that is inherently proggy looking about this bass that calls to me in a way that their past even fan fret designs haven't.
I think generally Ibanez seem to have their finger on the pulse with a lot of this stuff, where they understand the sort of, they know that someone who's, maybe playing snarky puppy style music isn't going to buy this bass,
right?
Unless they're doing it ironically. But it's like they know exactly the audience. It's like, yeah, if you like prog, this is your prog bass with the prog specs, with the prog thing, and it will work.
Definitely. There are a couple colors where I think you might be able to get by with the aforementioned genres, but yeah, I mean, this is your periphery through, plenty, whatever kind of progressive genres out there that the kids are listening to these days. I think that's what it would work for.
Yep.
I mean, this is one of the first things in Ibanez's lineup in the past couple of years where I looked at and like, I'm seriously considering one of these for different projects.
What's the price point on it?
That's the good question. because there was some other bases similar to this that they had that was in the low like thousands, not high 900 USD range. Let's take a peep over at Sweetwater to see what they've got. But right now, the one that I was looking at before that I think is this either came out a couple years ago or maybe this is new too, but it's not on their front website, is a Workshop EHB. It's kind of got the poplar burl, translucent thing. That one's 1,700. Compared to a Mayonis or something like that, yeah, pretty good value. But the models I was looking at are going for 1,000 flat for the fan fret versions and up to 1,150 for the other ones. Which, again, where are you going to find something that beats the price point?
Yeah, I feel like that seems to be part of what they're doing. Like the AZs, it's a Sir for not Sir money,
right?
And you're probably not going to expect it to have all the bells and whistles, but you're getting roasted maple and do they have stainless frets? I feel like they do. Maybe I don't know. Yeah, but it's that guitar for that market that's far more affordable. Especially if you needed a backup guitar, you could almost buy two of those for the price of one. So actually, you could probably easily do that. So yeah, that's another factor in there with the price point, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. This, like I said, this is achievable by mere mortals, and I don't think the difference is going to be justifiable for a lot of players. I'd play one of these, no questions asked. On the less interesting side, which I'm conflicted about this in one way, and I hate to do it, but Ibanez kind of kicked ass last year. They did a lot of things that I was really happy about, with Fishman Fluences and more bridge options, a lot of fan frets, a lot of cool finishes. But this year on their RGs, at least, in even their RGA, RGD series, not really impressed. Enemy number one for me is this RG80F. We're right back to the stereotypical, super strat, 8-string with dot inlays, regular white, soap bar humbuckers. I mean, does anyone think this looks good in the past 10 years? It's overdone at the very least.
What was the Yamaha guitar that had that soap bar-y, like 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
You know the one. It just kind of feels like that again, unfortunately. But yeah, I guess they had to phone something in this year, so it was probably just the RGs.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, COVID, you can't blame the R&D department entirely, but it's just, again, I'm sure all these are fine instruments for the money. It's just what's stopping me from buying a used 2019 or 2020 model over this, because that's the first thing I would do. I don't care what the year says. There's a couple ones that, spec wise look fine. Again, I'm happy to see more Fishman Fluences. I am slightly concerned that Fishman Fluence is slowly becoming the EMGs of yesteryear, where you're not going to be able to get a metal guitar without them. At the very least, they do have more voicings, but it's like, let's keep it in a healthy mix. Put some other stuff out there as well. The RGA is not quite as on my shit list, but the RGDs, I don't know about you, but this paint scheme with the taped off natural binding, that's not it's not really natural binding because it's kind of a cutaway thing. It doesn't really follow the curves of the body. I think that's atrocious looking. Is it just me?
I'm sure someone would really like it. It's probably not for me either. And I say this as someone who, like, my PRS guitars have that natural binding thing, but that's very much, that's standard issue on them, so maybe it doesn't clash as much, but yeah, I don't know. In general, temper this with anytime I see kind of, I'm not a Blueburst, Poplar Burl person. I know people are, and the last thing I want to do is just poo-poo people's preferences in there. But yeah, this was, I'm sure even people who like that would probably be like, again, is anyone seeing this and going, that's awesome, that's the feature I really want, that's going to make me want to buy that? I mean, if that's you, there's a comment section here. Tell me that I'm wrong, because I probably am.
Yeah, and I say this as someone with, paid decent money for a custom guitar with a design not unlike that. It's just like, it's got to fit, it's this weird, almost denim blue base color. I don't know. Maybe if it was something more complementary to the wood color, I don't know. I feel like this is another one of those things. It's like, this could be an easy fix, or if it was just more symmetrical around the bottom of the body. I don't know. Like you said, there's probably people out there that will eat this up. I kind of like a little better the charcoal burst. At least it fits the rest of the guitar aesthetic. Again, that whole poplar burl maple thing that it's kind of become. I think like you said last time we recorded this, the whole black open pore finish was like the guitar of the 2010s. I feel like this is going to be 2020s.
Yeah,
this finish.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're already there.
Yeah, definitely. So that's more or less Ibanez's stuff in a nutshell. Kind of a mixed bag throughout the whole thing, but good and bad as usual. Back to the good list though, Jackson. I think not even considering the circumstances this past year, absolutely killed it this year.
Yeah, I would say so as well. It feels kind of like business as usual, and yeah, I think it's for, again, they're kind of just nailing their market.
Yeah, that's the important thing. So a couple cool signatures, which, some of these are they 100% necessary? Probably not, but they're of artists that I think are worthy and I listen to quite a bit. Brandon Ellis from Black Dahlia Murder getting his own Kelly, which I'm all in favor of making more Jackson Kellys in general. One of the more underappreciated shapes out there, even if I do think of Marty Friedman every time I look at one. Pretty cool, kind of a staticky finish. Christian Andrew from, or Andro, however you say that properly, from Gojira is getting another bare bones, V Randy Rhoads style guitar, which I'm totally not against. Marty himself's getting a shattered pinkish, single cut, which I'm not a huge fan of personally, but that's available for those that do like it. Some
Marty can do what he wants.
Exactly. Marty can just destroy all of us. So, he can play a Hello Kitty guitar as far as I'm concerned. For $999 flat, the Pro Series King V EMGs, this just tickles my inner Hetfield in a way that I really, really enjoy. It's just 80s thrash metal incarnate. So I'm definitely in favor of that. The other Rhodes is what really impressed me. And, some of it just comes down to a paint job, but these lightning crackle ones are really cool. The matching pickups, blue and white, and there's the black and red. These are going for $1,400. The ones that I'm very much debating buying, though, I've not come across on this list yet. Here they are. The X Series RRX24 is my Rhodes of 22 in camouflage. My white trash just loves this.
I think you need to do it.
I kind of think so too. They're not supposed to come out till March 2021. I definitely want to play one in person, but my Rhodes is a pawn shop rescue bolt on. It's fine. It doesn't play the greatest though, and it's one of a couple guitars I think I would like to retire and just put on a wall for nostalgia. So I think this could be a very worthy replacement. It's got, EMG style pickups. I think they're passive. Last I saw, they're just covered high output, got your Floyd Rose, AKA Nevertune. So I'm pretty excited about those and the rest of the Rhodes stuff in general. Vox, I guess, is next on the shit list because, again, this is one of those things like preserving history in a way, but I don't know why. The Vox Mark III Mini and a Vina one, I guess is how you say this. This is one of those things that's like, I would consider this a less legitimate instrument than a cigar box guitar, but, maybe someone could absolutely shred one of these and I'd be really impressed. The whole drum machine speaker built into a guitar body thing has always been just horrifically offensive on the eyes and ears to me. Not to mention that it kind of looks like what were those things that they used to sell at Walmart? The first stacks. Yeah, that's it. It's just the color scheme of a first stack guitar, except for the
There you go.
yeah, the whatever this color is, this burnt orange Dodge Challenger looking thing. The marble tie-dye lipstick is pretty great too on the other ones, but I don't know. The rest of the guitar lineup is totally inoffensive to me, definitely not my style, but these things, just like, golly, who is playing these?
Yeah, who's buying this and not for a gag, you know?
Yes.
Who during a pandemic has just, you know, that kind of money to waste on a toy? It's a toy, you know? And not that you can't make music with a toy. I'm sure somebody out there will love these things, but Vox, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's a good point. Is, you know, everyone's kind of strapped for cash, and you know, this, it's just kind of insulting when you come out with stuff like this, to me at least. Which is sad because this is another instance of flip-flopping positions. Vox was on our best of last year, and I did have the opportunity to try one of their new tube pedals, and I'm really impressed. So do more of that kind of stuff, less of this kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Back to the best though, and something I've not tried, but this is more in the spirit of the product, I would say. Tascam TM-70 dynamic broadcast and podcast microphone. It's a $100 dynamic mic that, at least from what I've heard, sounds pretty good. This is another thing. It's maybe considered boring, but I think this is more in line of the circumstances we live in. And if people don't need to go out and buy this $300, you know, Shure SM7B I'm talking into now and get good quality for their podcasts and all the stuff they're doing to keep each other company online, then I'm totally okay with that. You know, this is a classic case of higher end technology trickling down as it gets a little more accessible, almost full range response. You know, again, it's a microphone. You can't say a whole hell of a lot about it, but the less Shure has their monopoly on this industry, the happier I am.
Yeah, and you know, I've spoken to so many people over the last year who have said, hey, I got nothing better to do with my time. I'm going to start a YouTube channel. What do I need?
Exactly.
And that's always one of the things. It's, okay, what are you going to record your speaking voice with? You know, in Australia, anyway, an SM7B is about 700 Australian dollars. So saying to someone, hey, yeah, just to get started, spend as much money on the microphone that you're going to talk into as the camera you're going to film stuff with, and then that's not factoring anything else in. If it's $100, you know, the thing I like is now I can just say to people, hey, go and buy this thing. It sounds pretty good. And I have students who want to get into either streaming or doing, you know, what we're doing here, doing YouTube stuff. And the more accessible, the better, in my opinion.
Totally. Yeah, they've had a couple of other dynamic models come out as well that fit right into that, you know, just more for the masses that doesn't suck. Because I don't know about you, but, you know, my first attempts at guitar recording or voice recordings were with, you know, like the cousin's leftover karaoke microphones that had an unbalanced output, and there's, you know, it was that sort of deal. So if there's more of this stuff. Exactly. Yes. What's the ones that have like the built-in speaker you yell into? It was pretty much that quality. So the more of this that's floating around pawn shops and used stores, the happier I am. On the other side of the spectrum, again, probably a fine product, and as we joked about before starting this recording, this is probably something we'll both end up buying at some point. But it's just like, come on, guys. The Radial Power 1. I'm definitely a returning customer of Radial products, reamping, you know, DI stuff. They're one of the industry standards. You got like a tone bone, right? Head switcher or something like that.
Yeah, awesome.
I mean, it's great.
Radial generally make good stuff.
Exactly. It's not like I would worry about their quality, so to speak. But with the Power 1, we're looking at a surge suppressor, and power conditioner, or suppressor, power conditioner. This is, for all intents and purposes, it's a it's a rebranded Furman, right? I wouldn't be surprised in the least if this were made on the exact same assembly line using the exact same components. And I honestly kind of want to buy one and open it up just to see if that is the case. I think this is going to be another classic example. Like I used to argue with some of my family members about this all the time. It's like, oh, I'll buy the name brand of this because it tastes better or it's better. And like, dude, it is literally the exact same thing minus one inactive chemical, and they rebrand it. I've been to the factory. I know what they do. You know, the USB charging port, I can get behind that. Has a couple more outlets than your typical Furman M8X or whatever the hell it is I'm using. I'm sure it's going to be fine. The main thing, and it's not limited to this product, that I have an issue when it comes to these power conditioners is they generally don't do shit. You know, they like to hype all this stuff, the surge protection for sure. But when it comes to noise filtering and that aspect of things, you know, they use a bunch of capacitor banks and all this, you know, passive circuitry to filter out noise and make the, you know, the electricity coming in to feed your gear cleaner. But you know what also does that? Literally every power supply that's already connected to your gear. So it's just usually it's a fancy extension cord, which is fine. You know, just don't oversell it, and I'll probably buy one. Like I said.
Yeah, I mean, having the extra stuff on the front is nice. I mean, I've got two Furmans. My good one, the PL8, I have actually. I think I've blown a fuse in it, so I need to fix that. And I have their budget one mounted at the moment. It's just convenient, you know, to have something rack mounted. I would say if you're building a guitar rack, though, it's the name brand thing. You know,
yes.
You want to see a Furman in there. That's the thing. Having said that, you know, good on Radial for doing that, and the less we complain about it, the better. Speaking of things not to complain about, though, I want you to talk about this very cool. You know, I'm a fan of June, both the book and the films.
Yes,
and I'm a fan of Way Huge as well. So this Atreides pedal is pretty sick.
I shout out to Josh Scott of JHS for introducing this to the world. It's the only pedal builder I've ever seen that would launch other people's pedals, which is hilarious.
Yeah,
but he said something that is so true, and I didn't realize just how true it is until I kind of caught myself doing it. With all other variables taken away, if you put sliders on a pedal or sliders on any piece of gear, you automatically play with it differently. And I've got something I'm not even demonstrated on the channel yet, but one of the classic Boss parametric EQs that has sliders instead of, you know, knobs on a lot of the controls, and it does make you react in a different way. So I'm already a fan of that. But as you said, this is basically like, you know, 80s sci-fi in a box, in terms of, you know, it's not a synthesizer, but I love the fuzz, rate, sub, bright, like all the stuff that you would expect out of 4 or 5 different pedals that come together and, you know, turn your guitar into something that sounds like 3 or 4 Octavias strung together. It's pretty wild. It took me long enough to figure out how to use the fat sandwich, and that's just an overdrive thing. It's supposed to be simple on the box, but it does this spitty crap, and you can tweak all the, you know, the pots, the internal trim pots, and, you know, I'm kind of scared of this as a result of how capable all their other pedals are. But I think this is going to fall very much in the same line as like the mini bar from Ranger that came out last year, which is another thing I have that I'm very glad I've tried out. I've just not had time to make content on it. It's kind of the same thing. I think this is going to be wacky.
I was just going to say it's like the Ranger stuff. It's almost like, you know, I've got the Electro Harmonix Micro Synth, which is just cool. You know, again, and because it's sliders, one thing is when you're playing with stuff with sliders, you know, if you're dainty enough with your feet, you can move them while you play.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that about the Way Huge, like the Swollen Pickle. The knobs are so big, you can literally just, they're like an expression pedal.
Yeah.
You can actually just play with them. And yeah, Way Huge are awesome. And that's, yeah. Again, it's like a very tactile, worked out character thing. They've just gone, I like that they just kind of go, okay, what's a thing people like? Synth pedals, let's make the weirdest one.
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of what they do with everything. It's like, okay, you like the Russian fuzz sound, let's just turn that shit up to 11. You want a clon kind of sound, let's make a super clon. You know, the fat sandwich is kind of like you know, fat overdriven plexi sound. They do that really well. So
Yeah.
I'm glad George Trips is still making pedals, because he's, you know, he's one of those guys. Like, if there's something new coming out, you better pay attention, because it's probably something like this. On the
Definitely.
other side of the pedal market, we have something that is maybe not technically in NAMM. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff like this throughout our videos. But the Fortin Maxon OD9, why? This is coming from an owner of 4 Fortin products that are sitting here now, one on loan. This is one of those things. It's like, once you buy a Fortin product, especially one or two, in the overdrive category, there's not really a whole lot of reason to own anymore. If you buy a Tube Screamer lookalike, especially a couple of them, maybe one of the asymmetrical category, one that's symmetrical, one that's a little modded, one that's not, whatever, again, you're kind of done. But this is a collaboration that just kind of, it screams of desperation from someone that doesn't need to be desperate. Like, Mike Fortin does not need any more publicity, and he's got a line of very successful pedals. So, and same thing with Maxon. It's Maxon. Everyone knows Maxon. So going into that already is just kind of like, eh. Then you look at the specs and you listen to it, and it's just, we've heard all of this before, right? There's only so many tricks up the sleeve of a Tube Screamer modder, and he's pretty much done all of them, which, again, it's a good, I'm not saying this is a bad pedal or even a bad sounding pedal. It's just kind of redundant in my opinion. So the first thing, they replaced the clipping elements with red LEDs. That's classic trick. Even like the Marshall Governor uses those in hard clipping. They sound great. I think they sound better than silicon diodes personally. The tone control maintains a little bit more of the high mids. Maybe they shift the frequency response up, cut some more bass, whatever. It's the classic down tuned, you know, 7/8 string kind of sound, and higher output volume, which could be the change of an op amp, but a couple other passive components, whatever. Again, slam the front end of a high gain tube amp with a lot of output, cut the bass, emphasize mids and high mids. Ta-da! You've got a Maxon OD9 Fortin edition.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, you know, Fortin is one of those things where if you want to buy this because you like Fortin and you want to support what they do, why don't you just buy one of their pedals?
Right.
2 more things, both in the kind of modeling realm, I guess. Right
on. Back to Best. This is another product I've not been able to try, and I really would like to. Polydigit / oh no, I blanked. What's the other one called? The
Beebo.
Beebo, that's it. Yeah. So they've combined into one firmware, which I thought it was only going to be a matter of time, and I figured they would, you know, make a larger product out of it, but I guess they didn't need to, which kudos for that. I feel like it's sad that I even have to say that, but you know, how many companies would have just been like, nah, we know we can do it, but we're just going to charge you twice the amount of money to pretend we can't. So you've got, you know, the built-in synthesizers, you got the cab sims, you got the delay lines, which you can make into, you know, chorus and flanger and multi-tap delay, and then the reverbs. And I mean, what more do you really want out of a multi-effects unit that's, you know, not drive oriented? And I'm sure they could do a lot of that kind of stuff with their algorithms, but for me, like, this is the perfect stereo effects loop kind of pedal. This is the stuff that I would always want post amplifier anyway. So I know you've been having a lot of fun with it. I've watched like all your videos on it, and it sounds freaking incredible in both modes.
There you go. It's right here. Yeah, it's very cool. They're doing a Euro rack version of it as well, which I'm very tempted to buy and just rack mount because, yeah, that's kind of cool. It's the interesting thing about it. I think most guitar players look at it and say, "Oh, it's a multi-effect," but you have basically Euro rack stuff ported into it. So I don't even know if this is a good example, but if I would say, you know, if you think of Strymon for guitar players, that is sort of mutable instruments for Eurorack stuff. And Mutable Instruments are cool because all their firmware is open source, and or most of those modules have been ported into the Poly stuff. So they have the coolest thing in there for me is they have one of the most essential classic Eurorack modules is called Clouds, and it's a granular reverb. It sounds amazing. And, that's a module in the Poly, and you can run like 6 of them in one patch if you want. And
Sick.
It's amazing. And now that the firmwares are together, you can have, I've got a patch in here, which is, they have this like chaos controller triggering like a random sequence that's quantized to a scale in the synth that's playing. And then, so you can just have that as like a generative music backing track. And then I'll just play over that and, change the, clock it to say my Axe effects or something, change the tempo. And it's an instrument, not just a pedal. So it's cool that it's coming out, that there's that unified firmware for guitar players. And then I think it's going to be a big hit for Eurorack stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes like, I don't want to say like game changer, but because it's got a touch screen and it's got all this stuff in it, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like kind of the thing in a couple of years for Eurorack stuff. I hope it is, because Lucky at Poly FX is amazing.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think you nailed it. That comparison. It's like the Axe effects of synth and crosses into guitar territory as well. So yeah,
there you go.
Definitely wish him the best on that. To round it off with the worst, potentially the worst. We don't know yet. It's not out, and in fact, it's not even announced as of creating this video. But Line 6 is tentatively, supposedly, going to release the HX Stomp XL, which kind of sounds redundant considering the size of the HX Stomp. I've had a lot of time with the the Helix firmware, spent quite a bit of time playing on the Pod Go, so got a feel for their sound and a feel for, the feel of the thing. This is we were talking about this earlier too, a great example of a company going, fine, you want this? Here you go. Don't complain about it, because this is exactly what you asked for. It's basically the same processing power as an HX Stomp, from what I can tell. There's more foot switches, a couple more things you can do in terms of, like an additional snapshot. I think a couple more presets or something like that. But for the most part, you're getting another HX Stomp, just with some more candy next to it. You don't have to jerry rig a bunch of MIDI controllers or external foot switches. You're not getting Variax support. The same limitations still apply here, but I think my biggest gripe, honestly, is, good Lord, is this thing ugly? I don't know if it's where we're so used to seeing screens on like the left side or the middle of all these units. When, you think about it dating back to the early Pod Pros, it was always in the center, like XTX3 was on the left, or Pod HD even, or Axe Effects, whatever. I don't know. It looks like a bizarro world creation.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think that it feels like it should be on the left,
right,
or in the middle. And like, to Line 6's credit, I saw basically like an FAQ, which was one of their people being like, if this wasn't the easiest thing in the world to do, we wouldn't have done it, and you all asked for it. So here it is. You have your built-in extra foot switches. It's exactly the same as an HX Stomp. I think maybe it has the foot switch editing and a few little things.
Yeah.
I like the recessible volume knob that you can push on.
That is great. That is awesome.
Yeah, I think that's really, really cool. And I mean, aside from that, it's what people wanted. So there you go.
Yeah, I think, and this is another example where I'm not even annoyed at the company. This is what happens when you listen to the audience all the time. You got to filter out some of the stuff. Like it's the classic example where like a movie producer or like a video game developer makes the crowd-funded game that everyone asks for. You try to please everyone, and then you end up with basically the same thing over and over again, or it's just the most watered down, dull crap. So you got to take that kind of stuff with a grain of salt. But if I have to make a bold prediction here, with something like this, with Pod Go coming out last year, I'm going to guess that, COVID notwithstanding here, we've only got a year or two left on the Helix platform before they drop something new. What do you think?
Yeah, it feels like it's reaching that stage of maturity, as people like to say with that, where I can't see how you could come out with another thing. Helix LT, you've got, I guess, the Stomp XL, the Podgo, the Stomp. What else? Do you do like an amplifier box thing that only does the amp modeling and IR loading?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I'm sure a lot of people will, probably get one, and it's either redundant because the Stomp is there, or it's going to make the Stomp redundant. That's kind of a little bit of how I feel with it.
Right. Yeah. They got a lot of stuff that could potentially cross each other's paths, but this one's kind of ridiculous. So yeah, maybe I could definitely foresee one or the other getting discontinued pretty quickly. So I think that pretty much wraps it for mine. We have a couple other topics definitely to cover on Leon's video, which will have already gone up or go up very soon. So be sure to check on his channel. And smash those, subscribe and bell icons and all that stupid shit that you're supposed to do. Thanks so very much for joining me on this again. This is, this is a nice reprieve in the shit show part 2 that's probably going to be 2021.
Oh yeah, man! As always, a pleasure. Thanks for having me, and keep doing what you're doing. It's a wonderful thing, and I'll see everybody here hopefully at some point over the next year.
Excellent. All right, thanks everyone. See ya.